let's talk about the American holiday that swept the world. Not Christmas, but Black Friday.
Yeah.
What's the oldest thing you own? And I do promise our listeners this is relevant to the discussion.
So the oldest thing, I've got a frying pan that originally belonged to my grandmother, which I think she bought in 1971. In fact, I know she bought it in 1971 because it's some sort of commemorative frying pan. But I don't know, that's a lump of metal, so it's, you would expect that to last
What's
a while.
A commemorative frying pan? Does it have the Queen's face in it?
It fries an egg into the shape of the monarch.
Yeah.
I can't actually remember what it commemorates. No, it must have been, wedding of Charles and Diana?
Oh, yes.
It's got a little inscription thing on the back.
Right.
Yeah.
It's probably worth something.
Yeah. I mean, not anyway. It's seen a lot of egg, that pan. But probably a better example, and maybe this is a weird thing for me to talk about on the New Statesman podcast, but let me tell you about my wife's tights, okay? So Mrs. Dunn has got a pair of tights that have been going for 16 years.
Wow.
Okay, these are a seriously quality pair of tights. Actually, they were a present to her. I think the upfront cost was fairly high for a pair of tights. And can I say where they came from? We're not the BBC. I believe they were from Liberty. So,
Ooh.
Yeah, fancy. But, 16 years. And we were discussing these tights the other day, and she was saying, the toes were, I believe, a common area in which a tight will fail. It's the toes are still very much intact.
Impressive.
No areas of sag.
I was going to ask about sag, but I thought it might be rude.
Zero sag.
Any bobbling?
No bobbling on this garment. They are still going strong.
That's impressive because
after 16 years.
Don't have a long shelf life.
Yeah, and they're especially impressive because tights are one of these types of garments that contain a lot of elastomers, so for this piece that I've written for today about Black Friday and about this phenomenon of crapflation, which I'll get onto in a minute, one of the people I spoke to was a materials scientist who said one of the things about modern clothes is that they're all really stretchy, and that's because loads of clothes now are bought online. And if you're going to sell clothes to people online, they're not going to try them on. So it's better to sell them stretchy clothes because they're more likely to fit everyone.
Oh.
And also, that's part of that's kind of the fashion that's been pushed very hard in recent years is for tighter, stretchier clothes. Very cheap to make. But yeah, they don't last well. Elastomers kind of, sort of poor quality clothes with lots of rubber in them do what rubber bands do when they're left on a windowsill or in a drawer. They kind of perish and start to break up. They get saggy, and then people just chuck them away. And that's part of this phenomenon whereby things look cheap, but they're actually more expensive.
Yeah, and that is the theory of crapflation.
That's the crapflation thesis.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not a rigorous academic thesis. It's something that I have sort of observed in basically in sets of economic data that head in different directions. So on the one hand, if you look at like the ONS basket of inflation, you can look at how much goods have cost over time in real terms. So you can see things like clothes and shoes getting cheaper over time relative to inflation. So that, for many years, you will see from say like, 2001 to 2020, you can see clothes and shoes experiencing deflation in most of those years. But at the same time, if you then look at the household spending data, you see that people are spending more money on those things over time. So you could say, oh, no, that's all right, because, the economy's getting better, and so people just have more money and they're just buying more clothes. But that's not the case for everyone. And in general, for real incomes between sort of 2005 and 2020 didn't really change in the UK. So there it's not really that convincing an argument that everyone's got loads more money to spend on clothes. So why are we spending more money on clothes? Because clothes have been getting worse. They don't last as long.
Yeah, and is this because often you hear phone manufacturers complain about consumers not replacing their phones often enough? You know, people are keeping hold of their old model iPhone for longer than usual, and that's hitting, you know, the growth of these companies, for example. Is it something that actually companies want people to be doing, to be replacing their items so often, and do they make their products worse in order for that to happen?
Well, I think there is, I'd say, not all companies are doing that. I think on the one hand, you do have companies that do something called planned obsolescence.
Yeah.
So there have been examples of companies in the past that have, made, printers that are supposed to start, kind of not working as well after a certain amount of time, or particularly you will get. So I've got a really old desktop computer at home. Still works absolutely fine, but increasingly software like web browsers and things like that are not working with it because they're not being updated to work with it. So, it's running an older operating system, and eventually it will become useless, even if it doesn't break, because nothing will actually run on it unless I get really nerdy with it and, install a load of different stuff. But on the other hand, I think it's also the case that this is just kind of what consumers want, unfortunately. So, in a economy with, where, people aren't growing their purchasing power very much, cheap novelty does kind of take the place of luxury. And in the market, then companies will just seek to build their profits from making stuff that lasts, is more cheaply made and lasts less time, rather than making stuff that will last longer and is more expensive.
Yeah, and I remember speaking to an economist about the sort of lipstick test of how the economy is doing, which is that people will buy cheap, seemingly sort of luxurious treat style products more and more as the economy sinks further and further towards recession, because we're trying to make ourselves feel better, but we don't actually have enough money to spend on proper long lasting luxuries. So this is the kind of phenomenon that we're seeing now. Yeah.
And I mean, I think there are also probably some other factors at work. I mean, I talked a bit about e-commerce leading people to buy, stretchy jeans and things that have got rubber in them that don't last as long. But also, I guess you're also seeing, as companies grow their market power through things like, first of all, really efficient marketing, like really targeted advertising, all the stuff that big tech does, they grow their power to kind of push people to buy certain products, and they will aim to get people to buy products at scale, which is where there's more product to be made. And the more products you sell, the more likely you are to sell from the lower end of the price range. And also they can use things like dynamic pricing to kind of not exactly compel, but kind of, increase their market power with consumers. And like you say, it is a fact of an economy that is not in rude health, that people will, you get this kind of lipstick economy. It's a very good way of putting it. But also the other thing about, if you see crapflation as a form of inflation that we don't really recognize in like economic statistics, as a form of inflation, like inflation is regressive. Like inflation costs people more who have less money, because people on lower incomes just spend a higher proportion of their income, right? So the wealthier save more, and inflation means less to them. And also they can afford to spend more on better quality goods that will last longer. That's if you read Terry Pratchett's Men at Arms, but that is the Sam Vimes theory of economic unfairness. He talks about, Terry Pratchett has his character Sam Vimes talk about a pair of boots that costs $5 and last a year versus a pair of boots that cost $50 and last 25 years, the wealthier you are, the less you have to spend. Yeah. So you end up with that kind of compounding, kind of regressive unfairness in the economy as well.
Yeah, and crapflation comes alongside other phenomena like shrinkflation, which we know a lot about, which is when products just get smaller but stay the same price. Or I've heard a recent one, skimpflation, which maybe it's because I've got a toddler, but it's very prevalent in baby food products, because what happens is, to try and keep them cheap or keep them at the same cost, they take out the good stuff in those products. So like they'll put less protein in, there'll be less chicken in, a chicken pie pouch or something for a baby. And so basically everything that you're buying just gets a little bit crapper because of price inflation. Yeah.
And it's in a growing economy, you would just see things getting more expensive, or you would see just people just spending more and stuff, and companies will be able to build their profits that way. But I think the key thing about crapflation is that in a stagnant economy, companies still have to seek ways to build their profits, but they have to do it by by making things worse.
Yeah. And so is that a warning to our listeners on Black Friday about being careful about what they buy?
Yes. Don't buy it. It's all a scam. It's a load of rubbish. Just
dig out your commemorative frying pan and you'll be fine.
If anyone wants to borrow my commemorative frying pan, actually, we got an induction hob a couple of years ago and it no longer works with that. So, do write in if you'd like to borrow my frying pan.
Someone is going to write in.
Yeah. You can't borrow my wife's ties.